Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Boruto Anime episode review. This one's going to be for episode 46 and 47, which I suppose together basically make up the end of the Byakuya Gang Arc, and we're moving on to different things after this. Overall, I thought it was a solid enough ending to the arc. I think, as was kind of predicted by a lot of people, they had a really good setup of very interesting, very kind of thought-provoking arc, but they inevitably went with the idea that, okay, Ryogi's kind of guardian is in fact actually just evil, and they sort of had to get around it by saying, okay, all of their support came from his genjutsu, and Ryogi doesn't really have too much of a point because it's all laced in the fact that the guy is actually evil. So that really eliminated a lot of the complexities of the arc in terms of trying to make it sort of shades of grey of like they're noble thieves, but in the end he was really just out for money for himself and was using Ryogi as a pawn to get what he wanted because he's a nice style user. As for the main villain, I suppose being kind of genjutsu focused, I thought that was interesting. They kind of revealed that his genjutsu powers are kind of to do with mirrors, that if he kind of witnesses you looking in a mirror, he can kind of take over you, which was, I think, interesting enough, but in the end it is just a genjutsu, and it was just a way to kind of give the Byakuya gang support. The first episode, I think the first half of the first episode was a little slow, and just in general didn't have too many big moments. I think obviously the best moments were, I think, just Denki, I suppose, getting a nice little moment of his father kind of showing that he acknowledges him now, because kind of Denki was the one who kind of reported the kind of big discovery of the fact that it is genjutsu. And he was like to report that, I suppose, in front of his father to the kind of chief of police. And it was a big breakthrough in terms of like, okay, the protests aren't actually as big as we think. But I also did like that, to a degree, they addressed the shades of grey with Naruto's speech kind of acknowledging that, like, look, okay, everything you've heard about this company is wrong. But I acknowledge that there is a sense of kind of unrest, that there are some people upset about things, and I acknowledge that. But I feel that, if everyone works together, if we can get through these little problems, by doing things step by step, we can get to a point where, the Leaf Village can be the best place in the world. And I think the core that he came to at the end was that he wants everyone who lives there to kind of smile, and that be a kind of key part of how they live. And everyone, I think, agreed with that. I assume it might be a small lingering plot point in the background as we maybe see the Leaf Village help people in need maybe a little bit more, maybe not be so kind of focused completely on progress, and that's all that anyone's focusing on. I don't really know how big of a deal it will be, because I really do feel they kind of neutered any sort of point that the Byakuya gang had with the way they kind of heavily vilified them kind of over the course of these two episodes. The second episode obviously was much more focused on, I suppose, the personal stuff. Ryogi kind of getting the, I suppose, transition kind of section of his arc. Boruto getting a little bit of a focus, and Shikadai, of course, getting a bit of a focus. That, again, I thought they eventually got it down to a point where it very much simplified things. You kind of took a sort of ideological sort of feud between Shikadai and Ryogi and just kind of turned it into, how do we sort of force Ryogi to break through his genjutsu and acknowledge that his life hasn't gone the way he's expected it, and that they kind of have to switch him from being a pawn to actually acknowledging that, like the game of shogi, a pawn can actually, through progress in the game, change into something different over time. So there's hope for him. I think they kind of established that he's in prison, he's going to be in there for a while, but that the Leaf Village are kind of willing to give, these type of people a second chance if they kind of know that they have the capacity for change. So I assume they will eventually get to the point where Ryogi is out and they acknowledge Shikadai and Ryogi's friendship, but not too big of a focus. They didn't even give, I think, the fight all that big of a focus, because when it really came down to it, it was just kind of him overpowering everyone with ice style, Shikadai taking some hits, and then Boruto launching Shikadai at Ryogi to release the Genjutsu. And that kind of solved everything. And then Naruto went after the main villain who had escaped, and they just had a real quick thing of like, yeah, this is how quickly Naruto can do things if he was able to just act immediately on any sort of a villain. No one is just on his level. That's how quick he is, and in one attack basically he can just eliminate any sort of a threat like that and bring everything to a close. So it was, in the end, I thought a fairly simplistic and basic ending to the arc. I do still think the arc was good, just because it did, give Shikadai a chance to shine, and kind of brought him out a little bit more as a character, which I think you got a little bit of when kind of Shikamaru noted that, like, oh, he's being determined about something for once, and he's called him like his idiot son and stuff like that. But there's not too much, I think, really overall to say about the ending of the arc beyond just that, okay, there's a few little nice moments in here where we have the teams kind of formed together now, and the next episode looks to be hinting towards, like, okay, we're bringing up the idea of being nominated for the tuning exams, which we obviously know the tuning exams is the Boruto movie plot, so it seems like we're getting very, very close potentially to where that's going. I assume we'll probably just get a little bit of a focus on each of the teams as they kind of justify why they should be nominated, and then we'll go probably into whatever the show is going to do with the movie plot, and if they're going to skip past it or do a full, even more in-depth adaptation. We'll have to wait and see, of course. I think it will. I think it kind of has to, because obviously the movie doesn't really acknowledge kind of any of the other teams outside of just Boruto's team and Shikadai's team. So I think they'll probably do that and just acknowledge that there are other teams, and otherwise keep it fairly accurate to the manga and accurate to the movie as best they can. I suppose the other thing we did get in this episode was the Katasuke kind of plot, that it was a decoy that they were going after Denki's father's company, and the main plot was actually that they wanted to seal Katasuke's kind of research into ninjutsu, which is in fact the kind of ninjutsu kind of gauntlet canister thing that kind of stores attacks and means that anyone without chakra, even if they don't have chakra, can use it, which is the kind of thing that Boruto ends up relying on in the movie and kind of gets him into trouble. So they're gradually set that up of like, okay, here's Katasuke, he knows Boruto, and here's him seeing, I think, that opportunity to potentially use Boruto as a way to get this big idea, his magnum opus, out to a wider audience. I think we just need to get Boruto to the correct place where the movie can sort of take place, and he's even more in a position where he kind of is annoyed at his father and needs assistance from Sasuke to actually become, I suppose, the character that he is currently in the manga. But yeah, I know it's a shorter video, even though I'm covering 2 episodes, but I don't really have that many thoughts on this arc. As I said, it was solid enough, but it just wasn't anything hugely notable. I don't think these last 2 episodes used their kind of time all that well. There wasn't the big moments that I perhaps expected, but I assume there's bigger stuff to come once we get into the movie adaptation, and then afterwards, I suppose, into the manga adaptation and so on. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the episodes. In the comments, let me know what your guys' thoughts were on these last 2 episodes of Boruto, and hopefully I should be getting back to doing these weekly once again. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.